So, went to Canada yesterday with $1,500. And I changed that over to Canadian. And what they give you is basically 1.36 times your money. Well, I got more than that. I actually got 2,070. Let's see something here. Maybe they gave me 0.8. So that's what it is. 1.38. Gave me exactly $2,070 to play with. Well, Uncle Nostra ended up taking that and had a rough go when he started. And my unit variance was not the same the whole time because I knew 2,000 wasn't enough to be playing $100 units. And furthermore, I would have to be playing $150 units to make $100 every unit. And well, that just doesn't divide well, does it? 13.8 units. Wasn't really willing to sacrifice that kind of money. And 13 shots and I'm done, right? No, we want closer to 40, right? Well, what does that mean? That would have been my base unit, which it was. $50, right? Well, unfortunately, I found myself down to this. So I already smoked through half of them, right? I could have decided to stay at this level. And fortunately, they had $25 minimum. So if I wanted to punt, I was able to do that. So what I was able to do is I was able to do something like this. Not even mitigating the parlay unless I got it up twice. If I got it up to 100, I would take 25 out. And then I would flip that times 2. Oop, that didn't work. Right? So I'd have 75. I'd flip that times 2. I'd have 150. I'd then take 25 out. I'd have 125. I would then, one time, try to find a way to flip that. And I had some fortuitous ability to do that. So obviously, I was able to turn that into 250. Do that a couple of times, and you're able to get it up where you have some manageability, where you have... You know, if you're able to recreate that event twice, well, now you have $500. I didn't flip the 250 for 500, not every time. It's dangerous, obviously. You need something to work at the right time, whether it's the 3-4, the 1-2 chop, or whatever, but picking a moment in time and hoping it never goes past 2, stuff like that. I had to hunt a little bit, but I got it. Okay. So once I had that 500, you add that to the 1,100 I had already remaining, plus that 500, I had 16. Now my buy-in was 2,070. Well, over time I was able to get this up a little bit at a time, flat betting. You know, I would bet 50 and then I would flip it and I would take half of it off. You know, not half of it off. If I did 50 times 2, I'd have 100. I'd immediately, instead of starting with 25 like I was before, right? I started with 50. I'd flip it. I'd have 100. I'd take 25 out. I'd be left with 75. I'd run the 75 out there, flip it. I'd have 150. Now I'm immediately taking my other 25 out. So all my money's back in front of me. Win, lose, or draw. If I lose this, I lose this. And I have to find another event to flip the 50 on. But I win it. And I'd have 250. Once I got to the 250, I just flat bet like $100 on the difference of however many more events I was going to be fortunate enough to catch. And because I had multiple tables, I was able to increase this process by playing literally the same events on 2 to even 3 tables at the same time. I know that's crazy. Don't recommend it. But I'm confident in my ability. Maybe too confident. But the fact is, I was able to find events where tables just weren't going 3 of anything, right? So I would just hunt and I would wait for an event where it wouldn't go past two, and I was able to win every single time it didn't go past two, $100. I also had tables where, of a binary situation where one event was going 3-player, but the other one would always go 1 banker or 2 bankers. So I would just wait for those to change color to the banker, and I would bet against it for the player, and I'd win. I'd wait for the banker, and I'd bet against it for the player, and I'd win. If I did it on the second, it was a more meaningful bet. If I did it on the first, it was a smaller bet, right? But I was able to, bide my time and find, a double. I was able to find a double banker and then bet for the player with a heavy bet and win. How heavy that should be is, up to your own discretionary ability. But, I was doing probably a little more than I wanted to for that event. But I do it under the pretense that if I catch it the first time, I'm going to keep that bet the same every time. I'm not going to increase it. So let's say I did 150 on that event. Every time that event came out where there was 2 bankers and I did a player and it cashed every time, if I won that event 4 times, well, now I have 600. That helps. And let's say I won 4 times and I had 600 and then the next one lost. I'd still have 450 to the good. Nobody knows when it's going to end. And here's another thing. What if it didn't? What if it won one more time of 150? I'd have 750. At that point, that's a lot of money. So I'd probably consider just reducing the unit at that point, because how long is it going to last? At the same time, a case can be made, just like in the $100,000 video, you're only going to lose one time. Why even bother, reducing it? You're already writing off the loss when it happens. But, I still want to keep as much of it as I can. I don't want to go back down to 600. So you could just take a third of that unit off and just do the 100, right? And then if that wins, you have 200. Oops, I'm sorry. If it wins, you doubled it to 200. Now you take another 50 of that out, you have 150. You can then flip that 150 for another 150, and now you have 300, right? If you're following along, that's not bad. Now, you could do one of two things. First of all, if that kept working, don't forget you also had the 750 that you did not lose, so you had 1,050 altogether there, right? So you do whatever at this point. You basically turned the equivalency of $150 into $1,050 for a net of $900. So that's not bad. Even though you backed it off, you could have made more if you kept running it up. But do you want to be that greedy? Sure, I could have kept flipping the difference every time and I would have, had it in the 4 digits. But you could also lose the stack. And there's nothing worse than having a good situation and trying to flip the stack and giving the whole thing away. You want to focus on bankroll longevity, right? You want to focus on keeping the money in front of you the best you can. And you want to lose small, but you want to take them for all they're worth when the going gets good, when the getting's good. So, there's no shame in reducing it. And then taking 50 out when you win it again and doing it again, with the difference. So if you want 100, you have 200, pull 50 out, flip that 150, now you have 300, pull 50 of that out. Now your entire initial investment, you see we subtracted 50 there twice. That adds up to the same amount that we started this process with, and we're still up. We still have our money in front of us. This is the take, the 250. This is the take. We're subtracting the initial 100. So even if this was to lose next hand, you'd still have your investment bankroll in front of you. Now, obviously, this would be a critical moment in time. You want this to win. You don't want your forehand effort to end up being back to where you started. But here's the good news. You are back to where you started because you didn't lose your money. And as long as you give yourself the ability of restarting with where you were when you walked in the door, you're always staying where, guys? You're at this. You're not negative or positive. You give yourself a chance to stay in the fight for what you started with. You don't want to keep parlaying it. You don't want to do something like this and then say, fuck it, I'm going to flip it for $3,200, even though the $100,000 video does that. That's a unicorn that doesn't exist. You can't think that's always going to work unless you're walking in with 10 grand and you don't give a fuck about the $100 because you got 100 units. You're going to find this one time. Guess what? You probably will. But I'm not going to try to do that the whole day because I only went in there with 2 grand Canadian and, 2,100 almost. So, like, I wasn't trying to waste 21 units just to get this to work like this one time. I went in there with an ambition that I'm just going to try to get my daily and get out. Turned out I made 2 dailies. I got out of there with $600. You know what I got out with? I left there with 3116, bro. Now, I told you. I was down. I started this with 2,070 Canadian. I was down to like this. No bullshit. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not right. That's not right. Well, here's the point. I was down basically what? $1,000 almost because I had 2,070. At one point I was sorry. I was down to 1,100, okay? So, basically I was down 1,000, right? I started with just about 2,100, not quite. And I was down to 1,100, so I was basically down 1,000 just about. Well, by the time I left, I had this. So I turned it around 2 grand. And it was work, boy. Let me tell you. I didn't have money to get this done quickly, did I? So I was there a good 9.5 hours getting this done. But I got it done. And like my guy says, if you're not going in there willing to put in the time, then you shouldn't probably be there in the first place. Oops. You shouldn't be there. Because sometimes, whether you like it or not, it's going to be a grind. And you have to be mentally stable to endure the cocksuckery that will inevitably happen. It will. I don't care how good a system we have. But just know that this can become 3x that if you're careful enough. I gotta go.